If you've been to a bookstore in the last 20 years, even 30 years, you'll notice that the sci-fi and fantasy section is dominated by fantasy books. Of course, that's changing even more now as they're now dominated by romantasy books, which is another topic for another time. We talk about that quite a bit on this channel. But I've started to just kind of look at what's going on in our culture and the like, and it seems to me like science fiction is just kind of dead. And it's the very rare exception that something sci-fi transcends into culture, whereas fantasy transcends into culture pretty regularly and all the time. I also think that fantasy is cheaper to make on TV, or in movies, because, medieval costuming and the like is very easy to make and come across. For sci-fi, you have to literally invent the future and come up with these cool ideas and electronics and the like that make it very, very tough. Now, that disparity may change in the future for just cost purposes, because with CGI getting to where it is and AI being able to do a lot of it in the backgrounds and the like, that's going to, of course, equalize a lot of things. I was talking with an insider over at CBS Star Trek just yesterday, and they actually believe that the Star Trek of the future can be made for 25% of the budget that they're making it right now, because of AI technology and, of course, bringing things in-house over there, which is pretty interesting. They've got a pretty high budget for Alex Kurtzman's Starfleet Academy as it is, and so we'll have to see how that all goes. Now, what happens with these type of things is these high budgets don't make returns. And what I've been seeing is a problem with this actually stemming all the way back in time. I saw that I've been reading a book called These Are the Voyages, which actually details the production budgets, the production days, and the ratings that came out of the original Star Trek. And it was the same thing back then. We're talking 50 years ago, and actually the property that all this is based upon. And if you look at it, they still thought that the cost back then, which was about $180,000 per episode, did not justify the budget. And so I started kind of thinking about this over time, and it's just is the concept of sci-fi itself box office poison or book sales poison? And I started looking at my own output at the light. I'm a science fiction author, if you don't know, and I'll go over a little bit of this as I go over some box office stuff to kind of back up what I'm thinking right now in just a moment. So please hit the like and subscribe button. Join us here as we talk about all things science fiction and fantasy. This is your real sci-fi and fantasy news. I appreciate you being here. I'm John Delarose. This is one of my books right here. I've had it on the screen. I'm sick. Sometimes I go on camera, but I just don't feel like it today. And I appreciate you guys for being here. This is The Stars Entwine. This was my first space opera that I built. And I actually had an experience myself where I came out with a book that was a game tie-in as my first novel. And I was working for Star Realms, which was fantastic, which I loved, which is a science fiction card game, which I highly, highly love. And then what happened was that was a mild success. And so I was like, okay, I better come out with a new book. And this was my one I'd been working on for years, and sort of my baby, my space opera world that I really just wanted to create forever and live in forever, which I actually do have new books out that I'm working on that too. But it wasn't ready. I knew that my first iteration of this book just frankly wasn't very good, and I had to rewrite it from scratch. So with the momentum coming out, I had a different book finish. I finished a second book right here called For Steam and Country, and this one was ready, and I knew it at the time. And I was like, okay, this is it, but it's fantasy. I've got a more male-leaning audience that's probably not going to like a YA sort of female lead sort of situation with it, but I got to come out with something anyway, right? And so I did, and this came out. And it did very, very well. And I was like, great. So by the time I actually had rewritten The Stars Entwined and had it ready, I was like, I have a following and I've got sales. And For Steam and Country has sold over 30,000 copies since it came out, which I appreciate everybody reading, and pretty big. Now, The Stars Entwined came out, and I was very, very excited for this. Now, it bombed when it came out. I actually spent a lot on marketing. I ran ads. I actually ran a publicist because this was going so well. I was like, I'm going to parlay that, and this is going to be even better because it's space opera. It's military science fiction. This is my background. All the people who surround me, this is what they want out of fiction, right? It's a spy story. Yes, this is going to be it. And it bombed. Like I said, it sold 300 copies when it came out. Now, since then, because I've talked about things on my YouTube channel, I've built up an audience. It's now sold over 7,000 copies, so it's still, very, very successful and exciting on that level. But you'll notice something. This was supposed to be my audience. This was not supposed to be my audience. This sold a lot better. Very, very interesting. And I really think the difference really is just fantasy versus science. There's just more random people out there, even though that wasn't my audience necessarily who's like watching my channel, following my journalism and the like. That audience might more lean towards this. The general audience that just randomly finds it on Amazon is more interested in just a fantasy book. And that's what I found with this, right? Because I think just sales-wise, it's like 3-to-1 or 3.5-to-1 in sales over time. And they both basically came out 2017, 2018. Interesting stuff, right? So just looking at this, fantasy just has a broader appeal, big time, than science fiction. And why is that? Because a lot of it has a lot of the same sort of tropes. It's both are very action-adventure oriented as genres. Both often get embroiled in wars. Both have monsters out there that they fight, right? So you might have a dragon, you might have a like weird space monster like an alien, right? It's like they're kind of the same thing, right? It's a bit of a window dressing situation, but one just like evokes the future and one evokes the past. And so what is it about fantasy that actually does that? Now, like I said, I started looking at this all the way around because I started looking at this year's box office, and that's what got me there. Tron Ares with a domestic and worldwide haul of 141 million. Absolute failure for Disney, right? Because this cost a lot more for them to make, right? And so this was a big, very expensive outing. Now, they made some mistakes with it, and this is the problem with a lot of modern science fiction. They do make a lot of mistakes on this stuff. But at the same time, like, I watched it. It was a pretty good movie for what it was. And so, like, I don't think it should have failed to this level. That's pretty interesting. We had the same thing, Predator Badlands. Again, something weird for a Predator deal. It actually opened okay. And with their $100 million budget, they're having trouble now because this really needs to hit $200 million after marketing and the like to actually break even, make a profit. So it's not going to. It's pretty dead and done at this point. Tron Ares definitely is a big loss for Disney. So every science fiction film that really comes out, and you see it with, all the way going back, Valerian and Laureline, when they finally made a sci-fi movie, bombed, right? Again, there's problems with that movie, but it is a pretty movie, and there's good things about it too, right? It's not something that's just completely something to write off. John Carter of Mars, they did the same thing. And there was a lot of marketing problems with that, but you always look at this, and there's always an explanation. It's always, there's a marketing problem with that. They didn't quite do it right. Ender's Game, like, same thing. Like, it just didn't work out. Like, why did it not work out? And then you go to ones that, like, it really did work out, right? And this is Serenity, right? Firefly. Remember Firefly, and it got canceled, and everybody was, like, all on board with it. We wanted this to be the new Star Trek for a new era, and got canceled in its first season. So finally, after a bunch of tries, they actually were able to make a movie out of it and get that done for a movie. Well, I mean, just look at it. Like, the budget was $39 million, the worldwide haul was $40 million. So it, like, again, it broke even on the production budget, but it lost a ton of money as a thing. So even something that, like, was something the audiences wanted in science fiction, there just wasn't a science fiction audience there. Now, when you go to fantasy and the like, you have Harry Potter, just like slaughters the box office. Lord of the Rings slaughters the box office. Game of Thrones, just huge ratings. And Game of Thrones, again, is one of those shows that has its problems, but it still wins. And it seems like just fantasy versus science fiction is what's going on here all the way around. And like I said, I have the anecdotal evidence that works in my book sales as well. And then we have the global evidence that's what's going on here with the culture. So I guess at this point, it's like, is science fiction just dead? Is it not even possible to resurrect? Is it not possible to get this going and actually have science fiction for us as a culture? And I don't know that it's, like, not worth trying, because I love it. I mean, I'll be honest, like, I prefer science fiction to fantasy quite a bit. And I like envisioning the future. I like thinking about the future. I like thinking about a better humanity. I'm not into dystopia stuff so much. And I think that's a very noble pursuit. And actually, if you think about the way science fiction works and the futures you imagine, it inspires a lot of inventors and the like. And I think it's actually useful for the culture as well. So that's a big thing, and I do think it needs to continue. But at this level, like, we are at such a niche spot. There's, like, no like real, like global audience forward. And how do we fix that? I don't really have an answer. And that's why I'm coming to you right now. What do you think about this? Do you have an answer for like how to change science fiction so it's not box office poison? Do you have an answer to change science fiction so it's not death to book sales? That is something that like we have to figure out going forward. And I don't, like I said, there's plenty of stuff out there that's good. Obviously we're harping on some stuff for these modern films that are just like mediocre films that are not that great right now. But there's a lot of good stuff out there, and it's doable. It's just like for some reason it just never gravitates to the mainstream. And that's pretty interesting at this level. Now, this didn't used to be the case. Obviously, science fiction back in like 60s for books and all that was going gangbusters. It was, with Isaac Asimov, Arthur C. Clarke, Robert Heinlein. I mean, those things sold very, very well. But I still think they were more niche-y than fantasy, right? Even back then, which is very, very interesting. Leave a comment down below. I don't know if there's a fix for this or if this is just a treading water upstream. Love to hear from you. Hit the like and subscribe button. And guys, check out my books. I've got fantasy. I've got science fiction. You'll like one of them, and that's the beauty. And I hope that you'll cross over to both because I have a lot of cool worlds that I'd love to bring to fruition through all of this stuff. And that's in the description below in my bookstore and on Amazon. I appreciate you guys being here. We'll be back.